Welcome to the Lady Up America podcast. I'm Diane Canada, and I am so glad you're here today. Thanks for tuning in. Women think politics are gross. You're right, they are. It's a cesspool. Today, I'm going to be taking a deeper dive into why I believe that, but more importantly, what do we do about it? Be right back.
Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down. Just lady up, lady up, lady up.
All right, ladies, welcome back. We're going to hit the top news headlines today, both at the local level and at the national and or international level with our good friend Steve Gill. He's coming in each week to help us do this. Steve is the former director of intergovernmental affairs for the U.S. Trade Representative in the Executive Office of the President in the White House. Also, former popular syndicated radio host. He's an international political commentator, founding editor of TriStar Daily, and just a general great guy. Welcome into the show, Steve. Good to see you. How
Thanks.
are you?
Good to be back. And it's been a busy week. You talk about the news, locally, nationally, and internationally. We could almost do an hour show of all the stuff, but we'll try to compress it to a few minutes.
Yeah, we're just going to hit the highlights. I know there's a lot going on in the world. Tell us what's happening. Just give us the rundown.
I think, first of all, in Tennessee, the big news the last week was the federal candidates that had to release their fundraising details up to date with the end of this quarter. At the end of September, October 15th, they had to file their Federal Election Commission reports. And there were a lot of interesting reports. First of all, David Kustoff in Memphis has over $2 million cash on hand. Our friend Tim Burchett over in Knoxville, East Tennessee, has about $600,000 cash on hand. So they're well situated as they kind of move forward, unlikely to have any serious competition. In Middle Tennessee, you have Andy Ogles with yet another really anemic report. Less than $60,000 cash on hand, another quarter where he raised only about $56,000 in one of the wealthiest districts in the state and really in the country, and yet producing such abysmal results has made him a target. Somebody pointed out that you can only whistle past the graveyard so many times before donors start closing their checkbooks. And I think that sound you're hearing is not the sound of coffins closing, but of checkbooks closing as we head towards Halloween. So his numbers are low. He now has an opponent in the Republican primary, Charlie Hatcher, who is the immediate former Commissioner of Agriculture in Tennessee, has been the state veterinarian, known best in Middle Tennessee as the family that has Hatcher Family Dairies that have been, for over 100 years producing dairy products in Middle Tennessee. He will be formidable. He is, a smart guy, a conservative guy, a business guy. And again, he didn't have to report any fundraising because he just announced. But moving forward, I certainly expect him to have more than enough funds. On the Democrat side, Chaz Mulder, who is the mayor of Columbia, Andy Ogles was the county mayor of Murray County. Mulder is the city mayor in Columbia, a Democrat. He reported over $700,000. He will be more than well-funded coming into the general election, even though it's a very plus Republican district. You can't come in either weak, as Andy will, with no money, or in a bitter primary as Hatcher might have going forward. So the Democrats are likely to really target that. The other big race and the numbers that have been put forward, Van Hillary and Johnny Garrett are facing off in the 6th district in an open seat because John Rose is now running for governor of Tennessee, vacating that congressional seat. Next August is the primary. Next November is the general. Johnny Garrett reported about $750,000 raised and on hand. Now, half of that was a loan he made to his own campaign. Van Hillary raised over $600,000 in actual donor money. So he raised about twice what Garrett did, but it all spins the same. So that's going to be a high dollar, bitterly contested primary looming as well. And then finally, you had the Matt Van Epps primary win. He's coming in with very little money on hand. He spent it to win the primary. I don't think there's any doubt he will raise plenty of funds moving towards the December 2nd general election, in that special election to replace Mark Green, who moved on out of Congress. Van Epps will face Afton Ben, a very liberal progressive. She's been termed the AOC of Tennessee. I don't think that will play very well in a district that Donald Trump won by 20 points. It's a plus 10 or 12 district. She may do well in Davidson County, but the rural 14 or so counties in that district will not embrace an AOC of Tennessee. But the fundraising in that one moving forward is going to be critical to watch as well.
So, Steve, let's just park right there for a second if we can, because one of the things that we see with the party, the mantra of politics, is those with the most money win. And I want people to understand why money is so important in these races. Why is that true? Although we did see in the presidential cycle, Kamala raised considerably more money than President Trump did and did not win. So what are the dynamics there, and why does it take so much money to win these races?
Yes, as I tell people, money doesn't just talk in politics, it screams loudly. And you can get outspent in a race. We saw that happen in the governor's race when you had Diane Black and Randy Boyd and Bill Lee all running. Both Black and Lee, they both had plenty of money. Randy Boyd and Black spent over $20 million in that statewide race. And people sometimes say, yeah, but Bill Lee got outspent. But Bill Lee still spent over $12 million. You can be outspent as long as you have enough spending to get your name ID out, to get your message out. And I think that's what is the real distinction in some of these races. When we hear, well, grassroots can win, give me one example in a congressional race or in a statewide race where grassroots alone without money won. It doesn't happen. You have to have enough. You can get outspent, but you still have to have enough to afford TV, the streaming, the radio, the direct mail. And if you don't have enough, you're going to get beat. You don't have to outspend your opponent, but you have to have enough. And then you have to spend it wisely and well, and in many cases creatively, to kind of bump up the value of your spending. So if you have less money, you better be creative, but you have to have enough to be in the game. And right now in Tennessee, you need, I think, 25 signatures on a petition to be able to run. That doesn't mean anything. It's whether you can raise the money to be a formidable, legitimate, credible candidate. And in many cases, whether it's in state house, state senate races, congressional races, or governor races, if you don't have the funding to be real, complaining that you're not getting media attention, complaining that money matters, well, I'm sorry, that's the harsh reality of politics. And if you don't understand that reality getting in, then you're probably not smart enough to serve.
Yeah. Well, and it's true in any business, really. I mean, this is why big brands, end up becoming so successful. You've got to have that marketing money, and it's just a cold reality of the situation. You can get resourceful, all those things, and there can be a groundswell out of nowhere that comes from some miracle that can happen. But it's pretty rare. And also the money goes to a lot of times paying volunteers, things like that. So you've got to have able bodies out there pushing the message.
Yeah, the number of volunteers you can recruit to go door knocking for 6 or 8 hours a day in the hot August and July sunshine, that's limited. Most of these campaigns, when you're having people knock on the door and ask for your support, they're paid volunteers. Either they're paid directly by the campaign, or they're paid by some of the special interest groups like Americans for Prosperity or others. Those door knockers are paid, but more importantly, the cost of buying TV spots, of buying radio spots, of doing the direct mail is very expensive. And keep in mind that in many cases, when you see somebody who's running for a state house or a state senate seat, you've experienced this. If you're buying TV, much of what the eyeballs you're reaching with those expensive buys aren't even in your district. They're not able to vote for you, but to kind of create that atmosphere and that name identification, you have to spend the money so that even people outside the district are talking to their friends inside the district about you. And that means you've got to go beyond cable, you've got to go beyond streaming and that kind of targeted communications, just to create getting, as we say in politics, the talk right. And getting the talk right starts with raising money, starts with raising your name ID, and candidates, whether they're running statewide in Congress or in state house or state senate races, have to get the talk right first. Yeah.
Good point. All right, let's switch now to the national stage. What's going on? I mean, I know there's a lot, but pick one or two things that we can highlight today.
We're still waiting for the government to reopen. The Democrats continue to vote against the very extension that they have voted for in the past, just to extend the same level of government spending, which of course as conservatives, we want to see cuts, not just continuing the Biden era budgets, but the Democrats won't even vote for the same budgets they've voted for in the past and are continuing to keep people unpaid, government offices closed. They are wanting $1.5 trillion in funding for healthcare for illegal aliens. And I'm proud that President Trump and the Republicans are standing firm in saying not only no, but heck no. And again, the government closure is solely the responsibility of the Democrats. Now, they keep saying, well, we could talk about Obamacare expansion. Well, the problems with Obamacare are what Obama and the Democrats passed. And they forced people to buy more expensive insurance rather than having kind of a low deductible, catastrophic kind of coverage. They forced people to buy bad insurance, and now they're clamoring over the fact that those rates have gone up. Obamacare needs to be dramatically revised, but that's separate from continuing a budget resolution that, again, Democrats have passed and are using the ability to hold America hostage to try and force their policy objectives that the American people have rejected. The other thing is you have President Trump and the Republicans continuing to look at whether the Supreme Court is going to overturn the Voting Rights Act, which would stop the practice of having to draw racially focused congressional districts. If the Supreme Court, as it seemed as they were listening to arguments last week, moves forward in doing away with the Voting Rights Act and these sort of racially drawn districts, Republicans could pick up 20 or 25 seats in the next round of elections. You've already got lines being redrawn in states that Democrats have gerrymandered in the past. And then finally, you have the census that counted millions of illegal aliens in concocting the districts. Your Republicans are going to pick up massive numbers of seats in the House if all of these things fall into place. And that's good news for Republicans. And frankly, I believe good news for the country to have actual voting representation based upon how people vote, rather than what we see now. In New England, Republicans get about 40% of the votes, and we have 0 congressional seats in those New England states. So gerrymandering has screwed us out of seats, and hopefully things are going to start balancing as we head into the midterms.
Yeah, love that. And we're going to pray for that. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with people who have voting what should we say, difficulty. It has everything to do with these are people who are here illegally. They have absolutely no voice in government and we should recount that entire census.
Keep in mind that you have Memphis, which is one of those racially drawn black majority districts that has had a white liberal, Steve Cohen, in, because every time they have an election and you have a couple of good African-American candidates, they divide up the black vote, he gets in again. You have super majority white districts around the country that have elected black Republican members of Congress. So Republicans at least are willing to vote across racial lines. The whole idea of the Voting Rights Act is that Democrats will not. If I'm black, I'm going to vote for the black regardless of who's better. But we see the reverse happening in Republican majority, white majority districts, where you see black representatives getting elected in Texas and in Utah and in other states. So again, doing away with the VRA would be a big step in the right direction. I think that's where the Supreme Court is headed.
Good. And one last thing, can you tell us anything that might be going on with the Hamas standoff right now?
The president has negotiated a peace treaty there, but Hamas is now in Gaza killing people who they claim were cooperating with the Israelis. They're wanting to keep their foot on the neck on the people who live in Gaza, which is the big stumbling block to moving forward. Until and unless Hamas is gone from Gaza, Gaza will not return to peace and prosperity. And Israel and I think the U.S. are going to continue to do what they need to do to wipe out Hamas as a terrorist group, holding not just the people in Israel hostage through the threat of violence, but the people in Gaza who deserve to have a life not under the threat of terrorists, killing them if they fail to do what they're being told, taking the medicine, taking the food, taking the opportunities that are trying to be funded to the people in Gaza. And I think that's going to be the biggest stumbling block to peace there, unless or until Hamas is eradicated.
Yeah, and they absolutely need to be exterminated. Thank you so much for the wrap up today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Make sure you go to tristardaily.com and check out Steve Gill and all of his team giving great editorial content every day. keeps you up to date, hitting the highlights, and keeping you informed. TriStarDaily.com. Okay, ladies, for tea time today, hold on to your hats. I'm going to open up and share some personal thoughts. Most women think politics are gross. And you know what? You're right. It's a cesspool. You really are right. But I want to give you some objective takeaways today during tea time, because even though I've got a flood of emotions going on inside of me, having been knee deep in this now for going on 7 years, I don't ever like to dwell on the nasty, dwell on the ugly. I want to dwell on the hopeful, and I want to dwell more on what God has to say about it. So I can tell you that the Republican values, which are those 7 load-bearing walls that hold up our republic that I always talk about, they are limited government, human dignity, individual freedom, free markets, peace through strength, rule of law, and fiscal responsibility. Those 7, what I call load-bearing walls, very, very, very much, I very much believe in those, and I will fight for those tooth and nail. Those were set in place by our founding fathers, and I think they are biblical in their context, and we want to fight for Republican values. What I am very disgusted by is the Republican Party lately. Very different dynamic, okay? Both parties have a lot of corruption at the core, and both parties will sell people out to move the machine forward. And I know that a lot of people who listen to me are in the Republican Party, and I know you're probably going, Diane, don't say that. But you know what? I'm going to start saying it out loud because it's just the truth. We have to start understanding that anywhere there's that much money and that much power, and those levers of power are being pulled by a very small handful of people, you're going to have corruption. You're just going to have it. And I think there are some wonderful people in the Republican Party, and certainly in elected office. I think God anoints certain people to go in and be able to be effective in that machine. But make no mistake, it is a machine. And it is a money-making machine. And, you know, a lot of people have heard the term uniparty. Basically, what that means is where the Democrat leaders and the Republican leaders will work together in order to get a beneficial outcome for them both, even if it means sometimes throwing their own people under the bus. It happens. We would be naive to think that it doesn't happen. What do we do about it? What's the answer? And this is what I've been wrestling with so hard. And I want us to always, you know, make sure that we're showing up to vote. I don't want you to become so disenchanted with the party that we cut our nose off to spite our face, right? By not going out and voting. So we have to go vote. But what I am starting to see, I'm not starting to see it. I think what it is, I have seen it for a while. It's just been reinforced, is that true power really is not in the hands of politicians. True power is in the hand of God, number one, but in the culture. And so what I'm seeing is that I need to be totally committed to doing everything I can to win hearts and minds of the culture, because that's what drives politics. Politics is downstream of culture. So if you have enough people in the culture that are putting pressure on the politicians, then the politicians will be forced to vote the way of the culture. And we saw this with Donald Trump. We also saw it with Ronald Reagan. I was privileged enough to be alive and coming of age in the era of Ronald Reagan. He's the reason I'm Republican. He inspired me so much. There will be a generation from now that starts to have kids, like maybe the people who just came of age as Trump was coming up. They've watched all this play out. They'll be telling their kids 20 years from now or 30 years from now that the reason they're Republican is because of Trump. So I had that feeling about Ronald Reagan. I think that there's going to be somebody that comes along that gets elected in spite of the party. The culture drives that person forward. You know, if you look at Ronald Reagan, he had just as many obstacles as Donald Trump's having. Maybe not just as many, but quite similar. You know, the party didn't want him, anybody but Reagan. They fought him at every turn. They tried to assassinate him. I mean, so many of the same things that happened to him that go on with Trump. But the culture puts so much pressure on Washington that they have to kind of toe the line. They have to follow with who that person was that the culture elected. And so you're going to have these once about every 30 years or so. You're going to have somebody that comes along. Everything in government, everything in culture is so cyclical, meaning it's just like it just repeats and repeats. History always repeats itself. And so I think what we have to do is we have to step back and get some nosebleed perspective on this. Get off the field for a minute and just zoom out and say, okay, what's really going on here? And not get so wrapped up in the political emotion that we can't step out and say, where can we be most effective? So I'm most effective working with women and trying to change the hearts and minds of culture. I have learned I don't have it in me to be inside the machine because I just have too much conviction. I just am not wired for it. And I'll just leave it there. It's probably a great segue as we go into my lady up techniques. All right. So the lady up techniques we're going to go into next here. So how do we take everything we learned from Steve today, what's going on in the world, the tea time faith element of that, and now how do we blend that into having conversations, really effective conversations going forward with the people in our sphere of influence? Because as I mentioned before, winning the culture is our only hope. You're not going to overcome corruption of government, right? Our best hope is to let God use us as laborers in the field because culture drives political decisions. Culture puts pressure on politicians. So we always walk through our 4 steps here at the end of our episode. We walk through decluttering, housekeeping, entertaining, and gardening. Those are our 4 steps. So the decluttering, I'm just going to kind of speak on a macro scale today instead of a micro, instead of picking out one news topic. I just want to speak from that nosebleed perspective today, that the decluttering is that God's on the throne, that nobody is in control except him. God allows certain things to happen. He allows things to play out, even in the gross world of politics, but he's on that throne and he's orchestrating things. He's going to take things even that are used for harm and he's going to use them for good. And he's going to teach us things through that. So I think the first thing we have to do in our decluttering is to just realize who's really in power. It can look like, a party's in power. It can look like a person is in power. Even back, if you look at biblical times, the Roman government, they thought they were in power, but they're not. God is the one on the throne. They may be able to cause certain events to happen, but then God gets a hold of them, right? And then God uses those events for the greater good, for his purpose. So no man is in control of anything. No king, no president, no Congress, no nobody. Okay. God is the one in control, ultimately, at the end of the day. Another thing when it comes to decluttering is just we look at all these events that are going on around the world. It's really easy to get confused as to who's telling you the truth. And again, I will say God is the center for that truth. We need to understand where the shoreline is so that we make sure we don't drift from it. And the shoreline is the Bible. The shoreline is those 7 load-bearing walls that I talk about. You can take any news topic out there right now that's got you freaked out, and you can come back to one of those 7 load-bearing walls that I talked about, and you can get your center there. So with God's wisdom guiding you and those pillars, those 7 load-bearing walls, that's the shoreline for America. So anything you're seeing in the news, as it starts to drift you, that confusion starts to take you out to sea, just come back and get your center, come back to that shoreline. And what I mean by that are things like if we're talking about what's going on in Israel right now with Hamas. Our baseline for that, obviously from a faith perspective, is God's in control. Hamas is not in control. Israel's not in control. Nobody is. God's in control. Okay. But we look at one of our 7 load-bearing walls there, it would be peace through strength. Okay. We understand you can't negotiate with evil. You don't negotiate with terrorists. People who we throw that word around, terrorists, but their job is to invoke terror in people. You don't, that is demonically driven. You don't negotiate with that. You eradicate that. You exterminate it like the bug man comes and exterminates your house. You get rid of the roaches. And even biblically, God says, my husband and I are reading Deuteronomy right now. When you have an infestation of that kind of evil, even God said, don't even leave a remnant. Because if you leave a remnant, they'll just repopulate and arm back up again and come back for more. So peace through strength is how we get our bearings during all this that's going on in Israel right now. In our housekeeping step, this one is so critically important. One of the reasons why we don't have influence on the people that we encounter in our day-to-day lives is because they see us as hypocrites. They see us as people who they don't really need to take seriously because we are not stable. We're either not emotionally stable or our behavior is not stable. And so in our housekeeping step, we are always reminded that we need to be walking out that fruit of the Spirit, which is very difficult to do. We have to rely on God's help to do that. And we know the fruit of the Spirit is peace and joy and love and kindness and humility and self-control and peace, all these things, right, that is spelled out in Galatians. So in order for us to do that and to be emotionally stable, we have to be clung to God and God's word all the time. We have to be always renewing our mind. I understand now so much more when we're living in the gross world of politics. We're living in this culture that is just, it feels like one bad news report after another. It's just bombarding. We have to get our center, and that center can only come, that balance can only come from God. When we're focused on Him, our eyes are on Him instead of all the news reports and instead of all of the bad things that are going on in the world. When we keep our center, our eyes fixed on Him, then He gives us that strength and that wisdom, that discernment, that ability to stand stable. What does He say in the Bible? Our job is to stand. It's really not our job to fight. It's our job to stand. God's the one fighting the battle. It's a spiritual battle in America and around this entire world. Whether it's on the political battlefield or whether it's in, the work battlefield, whether it's in the home battlefield, whatever it is, it's a spiritual battle at the end of the day. So our job is to stand. And the way we do that is by walking out that fruit of the Spirit with His help. And so we can't get rattled so easily. We can't be offended so easily. We can't be triggered easily. We can't be fearful. If we are showing up with those emotions on us, then it renders us ineffective in our ability to influence other people. And this, y'all, I'm talking to me today just like I'm talking to you, because I get upset by a lot of the things that happen in the party or on the news, whatever. It's not easy to do. What I'm proposing to you is not easy, but it's worth it. Because when we can stabilize, then we are seen as someone that other people can gravitate toward for stability. When the world's freaking out and you have the ability to be stable because you're rooted in God, then people are going to be drawn to that stability and you're going to have a lot more ability to influence them. We move then into our entertaining step. And what this step does is whatever that issue is that we're trying to influence someone about, we always want to lean in and make sure that we're giving them the stage, that we're entertaining their view of the world. Not to the point where we allow them to be ugly or abusive or anything like that. These steps are always meant, I always remind you, these steps are meant for people that are willing to exchange. This is not for the radical left that only wants to steal, kill, and destroy. They're demonically driven. That's a whole other animal. But I'm talking about the average person that you see that maybe holds an opposing view with you. You want to lean in and you want to give them the opportunity to explain to you why they feel the way they do. This is our entertaining step where you're leaning in and you're asking questions like, help me see this through your eyes. Help me understand better where you're coming from. Because this opens up dialogue. You're not just coming in with what you think and throwing your finger around, right, and telling them how wrong they are. Instead, you're leaning in. People have a lot of different opinions about what's going on in the news right now, no matter which news topic we're talking about. We're talking about Israel and the Hamas situation. A lot of the people in the world are getting a lot of wrong information. They think Israel is the aggressor. Or if you're looking at this No Kings protest that just went on over the weekend, a lot of people see Trump as somebody who's trying to take over America. people have limited and very filtered views of the world. And so what we're trying to do in this step is to try and lean in and get them to explain to you why they believe the way they do, because as they go a little deeper in that, their reasons for holding these opinions and viewpoints is going to start to unravel. They really can't back it up. I saw that today. I was watching a video from this young journalist that I know named Hannah, and she actually went out to the No Kings rally, and she had a microphone, and she was going around and she was asking these people who were protesting, help me see it through your eyes. What's going on? You know, how do you feel? Why do you feel like Trump is a fascist? Why do you feel? Help me. What is he doing that makes you think that? And as they start to, she gives them the stage, the opportunity to start explaining it. They can't. They had no answers for it. All they're driven by is emotion. So what you're doing in this step is you're helping them to see that for themselves. You're not trying to stand there with a gotcha finger. You're not trying to go up, see, you don't have any answers. No, it's not that. You're giving a safe space for them to start to wake up on their own. Then you move into your gardening step. And this is the most powerful step, right? This is where you start to drop lingering questions. Again, just moving more along that pathway of helping them wake up, helping them see for themselves that maybe they're wrong. And you need to be, again, the safe person for them to realize that in front of. You don't want to be the one that's standing there with the I told you so on the other side. You want to help them see for themselves. So as you go into your gardening step, you're planting seeds in their minds. You're releasing the outcome. This is very, very, very important. Release the outcome. Don't have any attachment to it whatsoever. That takes all the pressure off the conversation. And you're just planting seeds. And those seeds come in the form of lingering questions. They are very smart, crafted questions that linger in the person's mind long after the conversation is over. And this helps that person to kind of marinate on it a little bit and think about it. They can't get it out of their head, right? They can't get it out of their mind. And in their midnight hour, they have that epiphany. It's probably not going to happen in front of you. That epiphany is not going to happen in front of you 9 times out of 10. And you have to be willing to be okay with that. You know, I think this is where we get mixed up in our conversations with people. We want to see the needle move in real time. And that's just not how God operates usually. It's not how the human heart operates. People usually will have an epiphany or an awakening on something in their midnight hour. Like I said, maybe after a tragedy, maybe weeks from now, maybe even years from now. So we have to be okay with just planting seeds and understand that the harvest is none of our business. That's up to God. This is the path to restoring our culture. It's not going to happen in Washington. I'm convinced of that more than ever now. Our best hope is to turn the culture back to God. And these steps that I just walked you through, these are the best techniques in order for us to do that. And that's really where I want to spend all my time and energy, is in winning the hearts and minds of those people that are lost out there, that are just misinformed, that are lost, that aren't rooted in those biblical and American truths, and just help them see this is where the shoreline is. Look how far you've drifted. Come home. That's what we ultimately want. All right, ladies, what I'm liking, what I'm loving, and what I'm learning. I'm really liking the New York butcher shop that is about 15 minutes from my house. If y'all have one near you, go see them. Oh my gosh, they have the coolest stuff in there. Yesterday, even though it's a butcher shop, in the frozen section, they had Maine lobster and sweet corn ravioli. I mean, come on. Sounds delicious. We're going to be cooking that up tonight. Lord help my waistline. It's not going to help a bit. What I'm loving is this incredible new course that I'm currently working on. I should have it done and ready for you guys next week. I'm putting all of my lady up wisdom, techniques, all of that into an online course that's going to go global. And I'm so excited about it. So be watching for that. What I'm learning is that I'm not cut out for the inner workings of the Republican Party. 100% pushing the Republican values, 100% want to pour into my women and get them to the polls and all of that. But as far as the party goes, I'm kind of out. Had enough. Pretty grossed out. So, yeah, it's been a hard lesson to learn, but I'm finally there. All right, ladies, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope that this has blessed you, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your week. God bless you. Lady up.
Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down. Just a lady up.